All right, welcome everybody to the Sofa Kings draft here tonight. Joining me on the mic to break down the first round and then give a quick recap is self-proclaimed draft guru, Mr. Brett Stein, owner, GM, coach of the Minnesota Vikings. How we doing tonight, Brett?
I'm doing pretty good. It's not self-proclaimed, Zach. I've got years of experience and prior Maddens with many draft successes. Don't let my on-field disappointments overshadow my draft successes.
So we've got the draft rolling here. The Indianapolis Colts and Keegan Gallagher are on the clock. They threw 71 interceptions last year. I think the top prospect is Mr. Duff at quarterback from Alabama. What do you think they go with here?
I mean, what a strange year for the Colts. They have the highest rated roster in the league, and they just had all kinds of problems last year, especially on defense and in the secondary. And like you alluded to, 71 interceptions and a strong arm, but quarterback that wasn't getting the job done. And when you're in a division that produced the Super Bowl champion and he didn't even win the division, you need to have a player that can match up with Newberry and Deshaun Watson and Ryan Tannehill. And I think Duff is going to give him something he hasn't had in terms of a quarterback that's not only has a strong arm but is elusive and can really give him an added dimension on offense.
I mean, there's not much more to say. First season, he did pretty well. Ran the ball well with Jonathan Taylor as a rookie. Got him boosted up to a X factor. He was rolling with Jacob Eason. I don't think he's the answer. I think you got to go quarterback here, solidify that offense, and compete for a Super Bowl title. And it does appear that the pick is in for the Indianapolis Colts. Looks like we are going to have Mr. Duff, as mentioned before, coming off the board.
Yeah, someone I scouted very heavily. I didn't think he would take a quarterback, when it looked like he was going to have the number one pick towards the end of the season, but he put up a tremendous combine. He comes in with, I think, about 88 speed, 88 acceleration, 87 agility, along with low 90 throw power. How do you pass that up if you're a team like the Colts, when Easton's definitely not the answer at quarterback?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you have to. It's the best prospect available. You got to take him. Now we have Jonathan Reed on the clock here. No, Charles.
That's right.
Correct. Yeah, it's Charles. I apologize about that. Charles on the clock. Atlanta. A lot of questionable roster movements for him from the league, we think. How do you see him going with this pick?
Having had talks with him, because I thought I was going to have the second pick, and I ended up with the third pick. So I think he was looking to probably take a quarterback as well. He had a young guy at quarterback this year that was kind of hit or miss, and he finished the season obviously 3-13. So, I could see him, needing help in a couple of areas. He has some pretty good players at the skill positions at running back and at wide receiver. He has some pretty good pieces on defense, but I think when you're picking second, you got to look at a player that can make a big splash. I think the other quarterback, Phillips from LSU, I think makes a lot of sense here with the second pick.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Matt Ryan, aging quarterback, not what he once was, and you got to get to face your franchise here. I think Phillips from LSU, it's all the changing tides in the SEC. Used to be all defense. Now you got two quarterbacks possibly going back to back, number one and number two. Kind of surprising, but you never know. And it looks like the pick is in. And we are going to have Mr. Phillips coming off the board to join that Falcons roster. What do you think about that?
He didn't test out nearly as well at the combine. He is pretty fast himself with 83 speed and 91 acceleration. He's a little bit bigger. He's got about 30 pounds or so on Duff. He doesn't have quite as strong of an arm, but I think in terms of what Atlanta wants to do, when you have Todd Gurley, you've got Julio Jones, you've got Calvin Ridley, you've got some of those weapons, a quarterback maybe that's not a runner, but that can escape some pressure and keep his eyes downfield like Phillips. He's got two receivers from SEC schools and Julio Jones and Ridley, both from Alabama. It'll be interesting to see how that works when those two colleges square off in future seasons for those teammates. But I think adding a quarterback in that division, which produced the Super Bowl champion in season one, and then is very winnable. The Saints and the Falcons and the Bucks, they're all solid teams, but I don't see any reason why Charles can't have a good season if he can build up his rookie quarterback and keep some pressure off him early with the skill position players that will be surrounding him.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So like you said, you got Ridley. He's got a good weapon as a number one option. On the clock here is actually you with the Minnesota Vikings. First season back in Madden in quite a while. How do you feel like you did? And obviously, you know where you're headed. So if you want to go ahead and let us know, we can break that in and tell the league the pick is in.
Yeah, I mean, not the season I wanted. I had to make some tough choices after the season and cut my quarterback. But this is really a two quarterback draft, and seeing that those two guys are off the board, I looked at the best available player. I have some pretty good corners, but I couldn't pass up Eric Bryant from Oregon State. He was the Heisman Trophy winner, and I think he brings a certain factor to my defense here in terms of not just his speed and athleticism, but his potential to really improve quickly. And I think in this league, you know how much guys want to pass it and sling it down the field. If I have three corners that are quality, no team's going to be like, no, I don't want that. So I felt like the best move for the franchise was to add an impact player in the secondary. And I made a trade earlier in the day to get a quarterback. And I think this is the right move for the Vikings.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was a lot of holes to be had there, and I think quarterback was definitely one of them. You addressed that by trade, and there was only a 1-2 punch at the top of the board. You get the Heisman winner, comes in as an X factor, not something you see very often in the Madden world. And from a rookie, I think it's a great pick. There's wide receivers to cover in the NFC North, and I think it's about how he develops from here. This moving forward. On the clock now is Sean with the Jets. He actually won the NFC East in season 6, the first season of this Madden cycle. Big fall from grace coming down to number 4. What do you think Sean does here? I think there's a lot of holes in that Jets roster regardless.
Yeah, the fact that he won the division in season one, I thought was pretty surprising because the Jets didn't come into this Madden with a tremendous amount of talent. I know Le'Veon Bell regressed as he has gotten up there and he was cut. I don't see him going running back quite this high. I could see him taking, I think he would have taken Brian if he was there. He's mentioned to me his corners haven't gotten the job done. I could see him taking someone in the secondary and someone on the defensive side of the ball. And then on the flip side, you could see, an offensive player, offensive lineman. There's a really good left tackle in this draft. I could see him going offensive line or secondary.
All right, and it does appear that the pick is in. And you nailed it. He does take a big-time guard in Charles Baldwin out of Clemson. Clemson's been producing some elite-level talent, and the Hog Mollies are no different here. Clemson with a big overall pick.
Yeah, it seems a little bit high for a guard, but at the same time, he's coming in with 90 strength. He's got 71 awareness, which is very high, and 75 overall for a rookie. So you look at a guy 6'5", 314. He wants to run the ball. He wants to keep Sam Darnold upright. He's got some weapons on the outside, and Rashad Perryman, Brandon Cooks, and Denzel Mims, who they took out of Baylor a couple of years ago. So adding someone that can help him be more efficient on offense and keep Sam Darnold upright, I think, is something he was looking to do, and I think he accomplished that, getting probably the best guard in the draft.
Agreed. On the clock now is everyone's favorite cocaine-laden South Florida resident, Robbie Burwell with the Miami Dolphins. Always towards the top of this board. Never seems to find anybody that really does him any good. What do you think Robbie does here?
I think there was some rumors circulating before the draft. I'm not sure if it was the truth, but it could have been a cocaine-fueled binge of information being dumped out of his office in Miami. He wanted a pass rusher. I know his front seven didn't do him a whole heck of a lot of good last season. He did pass for almost 5,000 yards. He did sign a lot of veteran free agent on the offensive line. I could see him going offensive line. I could see him going pass rusher. Either of those spots probably stood out to me the most at pick 5.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Robbie needs a plethora of things to help him, and I don't think it ever really will. He thought Tua was going to be the answer, and he threw for a lot of yards, but still doesn't result in wins for Robbie. And it does appear that the pick is in. And coming off the board in a big surprise is a tight end. He did let Gesicki go, so maybe that's a replacement for him. I'm not sure I love the pick for him, but what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think the value's there. I mean, I think he is a star level player, and he does offer a good size and speed combination. But I don't think tight ends are what they used to be in Madden in terms of effectiveness. So while it's certainly someone he can use to step in and start at pick 5, like you said, there was other needs there. He needed a handful of other things. If he was going to take a tight end, why not maybe trade down to get some extra picks? If he was going to take a tight end, that likely would have been there further down in the first round.
Yeah, I agree. Now on the board is the Dallas Cowboys, and it's the other Reed brother. At number 6, he sits here. There's been rumors he's been trying to trade back. Otherwise, I think most of the skill positions are set. This team's pretty well loaded. I think it was a disappointing season to come in at number 6. What do you think he goes with?
Yeah, I believe he traded up with Kansas City. He traded the 17th pick, middle linebacker Leighton Vander Esch, and a backup running back to move it to pick 6. So there must be someone there he really likes. I agree. The offensive line's still in good shape. Dak's very good. He's got a boatload of skilled talent, a wide receiver and running back, and an Elliott, and Amari Cooper, and a few other players. So I could see him maybe taking a defensive lineman, maybe some help in the secondary. You're talking about a division that has, Washington, which went to the Super Bowl and has one of the best offensive attacks in the entire league. The Eagles are a pretty solid team. And then, of course, the Giants won the division last year, and they have a pretty effective wide receiver grouping out there. So I could see him taking someone to kind of combat the passing offenses in his own division to try and get back to the playoffs next year.
Looks like the pick is in, and you are correct. He did trade up for this pick. I did have it backwards. I thought he traded out of this pick. He does stay. He moves up to number 6 and takes a free safety in Mitch Briscoe from Michigan State. I think this is a good pick. I think his secondary is probably his biggest weakness, and I think he addressed it quickly.
Yeah, Briscoe, I believe his father was an Olympian, if I recall correctly, and he comes in with star development, and he has 91 speed, 90 acceleration. He can really jump, which I think is important, and he comes to 85 hit power. So he's a bigger safety at 6'2", 201, so to have that kind of speed and athleticism, but also be able to lay a hit, I think is important for Dallas to turn their fortunes around this season.
I agree. On the clock now is everyone's favorite sub maker. Well, maybe not everybody's, but he does sling the subs, goes to Carolina, slings the interceptions as well. He traded for Aaron Rodgers from myself in Green Bay and got rid of his first-round pick the first year. He's going to hold on to it this year. Pick number 7. He actually, believe it or not, if you look at the stats, he had one of the best defensive lines in all of Sofa Kings. Best player on the board is a defensive end. I don't know if he'll go that way. I don't think it benefits his team the most. What do you think?
I mean, he's got to be disappointed. Tom Brady didn't retire. He's 45. He gets 2 years out of Aaron Rodgers, and he just retires, probably sick of throwing all those interceptions. So there's no quarterback here worth taking. So I could see he's got wide receivers. He's got CMC in the backfield. His offensive line's pretty good. He's got some really fast corners. So I think his linebackers could use some help. I don't know that there's a linebacker in this draft worth taking here at 7. So I think the defensive end you're alluding to is Levi Sharp out of Boise State, who's just an absolute monster. I could see him being a pick, but it's Jamie, so I could see he could take anybody. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
And with that, he does take Levi Sharp, the second X Factor off the board, both in the top 7. An absolute freak of a monster. Coming in at 23, so development's going to be stunted a little bit compared to the other X Factor of 21. But I mean, what can you say about Sharp? He's a monster out of Boise State. You don't see these. I don't want to call them a mid-major school because they're not a mid-major, but the schools that aren't Power Five.
Yeah, it's an upper team G5 school. They've had some success. They've put players in the NFL. I mean, for Sharp to be 6'4", 265, he's got 84 speed, 86 acceleration, 81 agility, 82 strength, and on top of that, 82 tackling, 84 hit power, 82 pursuit, his 76 block shedding and 76 power moves, 83 finesse moves, all very solid. And like you said, he's an X factor. So in a year or two, he comes in and he's about 80 overall. He could be at 90 overall in a season.
Yeah, absolutely. On the board now is one of the resident Arizona guys, Jake Beatty. I'm not sure which way it is to say it. Uh, he's been complaining about Carr. I don't think there's a quarterback to take here. We're talking about number 8 overall. What do you think he does?
I mean, in looking at his roster, he and I had a little bit of talk about Carr just because I needed a quarterback, but he decided to kind of hold on to him. The Raiders are in a division that the division winner last year was under 500. So I don't think he's that far away from adding an impact player to be able to contend next year. I think he could use some help on defense, to be honest with you. Um, a defensive lineman would make sense. I could see a corner. He's got some pretty good running backs. He's got Henry Ruggs at wide receiver. So I would say probably defensive side of the ball. He took a strong safety second overall in last year's draft, if I recall correctly. So I could see him taking a defensive player again this time around.
And with that, the pick is in, and I'm surprised by it. The fastest wide receiver in the draft, Mr. Wooten. So he's gonna pair him with Ruggs, and he's gonna throw deep all day long.
I hope he has enough time to throw because with the way the game goes, the longer you wait to develop some of those deep routes, as we saw with the Chiefs and Dylan Mays last year, if you just rely on that to be your offense, you're going to throw your fair share of interceptions. You're going to take sacks and potentially get your players hurt. At the same time, it's going to put a lot of pressure on opposing teams to guard, those two wide receivers. Not a lot of teams have that much speed at corner. There's not a lot of 97 speed corners floating around. I think Dante Jackson in Carolina is the only, maybe Jair Alexander up in that horrible city called Green Bay, maybe, that has the kind of speed to stay with those wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely put a threat out there every time on either side of the field. You can't just worry about playing deep on just one side of the field. If you play single high safety, you could be in trouble with a receiving core like that. Moving on to Mr. Joe Hayes in Tennessee. He actually has 2 picks in this first round, both relatively high. I'm not sure which one he traded for number 14, which he has coming up. Number 9 is the one he earned with a pretty lackluster season from his usual standards. Again, another roster that's pretty well loaded. He drafted a wide receiver last year and he absolutely fed him to the point where he had to be warned. Receiver stacked, quarterback. I mean, Tannehill serviceable. Derrick Henry, who he doesn't utilize nearly enough. Where do you think Joe goes?
I mean, again, I would look at the division he's in. The Jags won the Super Bowl, the Texans won the division, and the Colts, while they had a disappointing season, that earned the number 1 overall pick, arguably have the most talented roster in all of Sofa Kings. So I'm looking at defense. Defensive line is not a strength. You talk about the rushing attacks. You got Jonathan Taylor. You got Kirk Holloway. You got Hartwell down in Houston. You got Kenyon Drake also in Jacksonville. I mean, I think I could see him easily trying to bolster that front seven because if you're going to talk about winning more games in that division, you got to play those teams 6 times a year. You got to get some stops.
I agree, and I think, in my opinion, defensive line's the deepest position group within this class, and I think he goes that way as well.
Definitely.
And off the board comes Mr. Cole Whitfield out of Texas. Whitfield's a right end, comes in as a superstar. Should be a really good addition to the roster.
Yeah, and as you mentioned a few minutes ago, he comes in at 21 and he's already a superstar, so he'll be able to develop quickly. And he's, at the age where he could, add quite a few points in just one season. He has tremendous size at 6'4", 276. He's fast, and he comes in with pretty solid power and finesse moves and block shedding. and with the development, and he's going to start right away. I would imagine a pretty impressive package to help them shore up their run defense and just provide a little bit of pressure and strength off the edge.
Yeah, and like we said, deepest position group, probably his weakest spot, and it's a no-brainer here. And it turns out to be almost a home run pick, getting a superstar. There's not many of those floating around. On the clock is going to be myself. I traded defensive tackle Kenny Clark, young, locked up, really expensive nose tackle. I just don't feel like he made the plays he should have made for his salary. So therefore, I got number 10 out of it. And my biggest weakness I felt was definitely my linebacking core, and I had to address it here. And I'm going to go ahead and go with Jeff Clement out of Texas.
I was a little bit surprised at this pick. Not that I disagreed about your linebacking core, but you have a really fast middle linebacker, and you've got some linebackers that are kind of pass rushers. So Clement adds even more speed to what was already a very fast defense to begin with. But I'm not sure how he fits in terms of your scheme and where he's going to play on the field.
Yeah, so we're going to make a transition to a 4-3 defense here for the upcoming season, and he's gonna fit in that way. So the linebackers are going to move over to end. He's going to stay on the outside backer, play next to. Weirdly enough, I traded up for number 10 last year as well, so I've back-to-back number 10s. And Mr. Richard, who I feel is an absolute monster freak of an athlete in the middle, he's going to pair well with him. Scotty Huffman is on the clock, and I think we'd be remiss might not be the right word. We'd be
remiss.
Yeah. Remiss if we didn't mention East Coast Breaks, at least at this point once, and we'll do it again later for their sponsorship of the league and letting us do some cool prizes and some cash giveaways for the Super Bowl winners. So that's East Coast Breaks on Facebook. They do all kinds of hobby trading, sports cards, all kinds of good stuff. You just need to go ahead and check them out. And that's East Coast Breaks. But Scotty's on the clock here at the Eagles. He had a hell of a roster turnover to do because of salary cap issues from the real life cap management. How do you think he's done so far and where he's going with it?
I played him, I want to say, week 2 last season, and I really struggled with his defensive line. But I knew, like you said, when you have Carson Wentz's contract and Fletcher Cox and Darius Slay, that there was going to be some turnover there, and you saw it. There's not a whole, he's got one really good wide receiver, and then a whole bunch of okay guys after that. Zach Ertz left in free agency. I believe he had some players retire. The offensive line looks like it could use some help up the middle and on the left side for sure. Fletcher Cox is still there, and then around him is a whole bunch of just kind of okay players. Needs a lot of help at linebacker, and the secondary is okay, but I could see him easily taking a left tackle or a front 7 defensive player.
And he does go mentioning how much trouble you have with the defensive line. He beefs that up with yet another Clemson product, Kendrick Jenkins, on the right side.
Another big dude, 6'6", 280. Like you said, he's played Clemson, played at a high level. He's not quite as fast as some of the other defensive ends that have come off the board, but he does have 89 power moves. I don't know how that pairs with 68 block shedding. So we'll see how that shakes out. He does have 83 strength, 74 awareness. So it seems like he's the kind of player that should be able to get on the field right away. He's only 21 years old. With how much attention Fletcher Cox gets, I think he'll have a chance to put up some stats this year and get a lot of playing time and continue to develop in that Eagles front 4, where you're playing Washington and Dallas and the Giants. Those are all three teams that are right in the mix. 2 made the playoffs, and John Reed missed by a game in Dallas. So you got to add talent. You got to stop those offenses.
Agreed. On the clock is Christian, and he actually already has his Christian Morales with Cincinnati. He actually already has his pick in, so we're going to go ahead and jump ahead and get that submitted here. And he's decided to go ahead and go with center from Texas again. Texas and Clemson just really taking up this draft board. Adds a little protection for Joe Burrow.
Yeah, 3 of the last 4 picks have been from the University of Texas. Very, very unusual to see that. But yes, I mean, we got a superstar X factor quarterback. You got Joe Mixon, superstar running back. You got John Ross and Boyd and T. Higgins. You need to address that up front for sure. And other than his left tackle, I played him in week 16 last season. First half, he was dominating me offensively. In the second half, Joe Burrow had like no time to throw. So offensive line is something that I really believe in for Madden, and adding a center that can play right away and provide some protection and help in the run game. I don't think you can go wrong with that kind of pick.
I agree. And now up is Dana. Dana is your Super Bowl VI champion. He entered the playoffs at 8-8 that season and went on a hell of a run, pulled it off. I'd say the biggest surprise we've ever seen in any form of Madden, excluding the Sophie Kings universe. Um, he's on the clock with Tampa Bay. Tom Brady's still around, but he did just trade for Jameis Winston. So I think Winston's back and he's going to be starting again for them. So where does he go here at 13?
I think if you're Tampa Bay, again, you've got two really good running backs in Fournette and Ronald Jones the second. You've got Godwin, Mike Evans. You got really nice skill players there. Trey Burton at tight end. I could see him maybe trying to beef up the offensive line a little bit. He's got three really good offensive linemen and a really nice right tackle, but he's getting a little bit uh, older in the kind of the middle of the offensive line there. I could see really Eddie's spot on defense. Looking at his defensive line, he's got an outstanding D tackle in Vita Vea. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of talent on the defensive line. Linebacker, he's got some, three really solid linebackers in White, David, and Shaq Barrett. His secondary's really solid. I think Sean Murphy Bunting was his third best corner last year. I think he made the Pro Bowl. And he's got speed back there too. I could see defensive line or I could see offensive line for his pick.
Yeah, I think Hog Molly's is exactly where he's going with it. And his pick is in here. Coming off the board from Washington State, not a position you usually see from Washington State, Jay Bassey as a defensive tackle.
Another player coming in. I think he's superstar development. 300-pounder, only 21 years old, really strong. I see 93 strength out of him, 82 block shedding, 76 power moves. You put him next to Vea. Good luck running up the middle against Tampa Bay. I mean, you're talking about the Saints with Kamara and the Falcons with Gurley, and the Panthers with CMC. That's three really premier running backs you got to try and stop. So I don't think you can go wrong with a really strong defensive tackle. And as you mentioned a few minutes ago, Zach, defensive line is by far the deepest position in this draft class.
Yeah, and so we have Joe Hayes up again. Like I mentioned earlier, he had number 9 and now has number 14. He's already taken one defensive lineman. We still think it's his weakest position even after the pick. I would not be surprised if he goes there again and his pick is in now.
I think I just spoke about was the guy the Titans took. I confused him with the guy the Buccaneers took in Jamie Reese. Let me talk about the Bucs pick because I messed that up previously. Reese comes in, 92 strength, very similar to Bassey. Again, you talk about a guy at 300 pounds who can stuff the middle. I think the Titans and the Bucs, picking these two D tackles back to back, they had the same thing in mind, stopping their division mates' rushing attacks. And I think if you're going to do that and force teams to pass and be one-dimensional, that favors his secondary and the rest of his defense.
You are correct with that. I actually mentioned that wrong, and you rolled with it. So you're the ultimate pro catching the mistake and fixing it up. As we have Jimmy Moore Jr. in the Lions on the clock. I mean, he's done a really good job of building his roster. I still think under center, he doesn't know what he wants to do. Playing him twice a year, I feel like I've played 7 different quarterbacks already. I think he needs to get something under center. I don't know that there's one at 15 here that is worth the pick.
Yeah, I think he'd be reaching if he took a quarterback here. He beat me twice this past season. He was able to run on me, and his run defense is really good, at least in our games. He does have some solid wide receivers. He's got speed and size with Galladay, Agnew, and Farley. He's got a really good tight end and T.J. Hawkinson, who's big and can run. His offensive line, I could see him taking offensive line. The right side of his line could use a little bit of help. His defensive line's not bad. He took a middle linebacker in round 1 last year, I think 6th overall. Deion Cheeks was a tremendous player for him in the middle, and he's got Gerard Davis as well. His corners are solid. Jeff Okudah is a standout out of Ohio State. His safeties are okay. Again, like you said, there's no quarterback really worth taking here, so I could see him taking offensive line. I could see him taking defensive line or even a linebacker. No position other than maybe wide receiver would surprise me here.
And with that, the pick is in. And Jimmy decided to go with defensive line as well. So we've got a little run going on here from Arkansas, Austin Roth.
Austin Roth, he's a bit more of a traditional pass rusher as a 4-3 defensive end. He's got 79 finesse moves, 85 speed, 85 acceleration, but 85 strength. So not only is he pretty fast, he's got really good strength and finesse moves for a rookie. 6'3", 263 is not small by any stretch. So I think if you can add pass rush, like, in our division, the Bears won the division, you won the wild card. You're talking about stopping, mobile quarterbacks, Love and Mitch Trubisky, and then Minnesota. My offense had its moments, but I still have skill position players in Cook and Jefferson and Thielen and guys like that. So adding something to defensive line and pass rush while also not sacrificing strength or speed is something I can't really fault Detroit for doing here.
I agree. David on the clock next in Cleveland, longtime Cleveland resident here. He let Jarvis Landry go in the offseason, still has OBJ, but everybody knows he likes to sling the ball around. There's a speedy wide receiver on the board still. I don't see there's any way he passes on him, just knowing David's style. What do you think?
Yeah, I was talking to him before the draft. He's like, I don't really have a whole lot of holes. I don't need a whole lot. And whenever I hear him say that, I'm like, you're just going to take what's the shiny new thing to get, which is a fast wide receiver. So, yeah, I think Lloyd Poyer out of Oklahoma fits the bill. He's 6'1", but he has outstanding speed, can really run solid routes. And if Landry's gone, OBJ is getting older and more expensive. Pairing a really fast wide receiver opposite him, like you said, if teams play one high safety or try and focus on OBJ, Poyer's got the speed and polish coming in to really make defenses think twice about not paying him more attention.
And just as we thought, Poyer comes off the board here at 16. I'm actually surprised that somebody with his speed falls to 16. Just the Madden way, speed rolls, speed is king. So maybe times are changing a little bit, and ratings actually matter just a hair. But 16, big fast wide receiver, Cleveland, no surprise here at all.
No, none.
Dylan Mays, AFC West champion, season 6, and then bottom of the barrel, season 7. The ultimate roller coaster of an owner and general manager. He lets all kinds of guys go in the offseason. Then he trades for an expensive linebacker who I like Van Der Esch. I think he's going to help that defense. I think losing Matthews is going to hurt more than Van Der Esch helps. But he trades out of 6, gets Van Der Esch, gets an extra, I believe it was a second or third. I can't remember which. It was a third. And then picks up 17 here. I couldn't even begin to tell you where Dylan goes.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs are one of those tricky teams. Having had teams in the past that had salary cap issues within a year or two, he lets a really good left tackle go. He lets the best tight end in the game go. He let the Honey Badger into free agency. I understand he doesn't have the money to sign all those players. I just haven't seen enough out of him in terms of free agency and the draft to say, yes, I believe you can replace those players with comparable talent. Because if he was going to let those players go and he was struggling all season, why didn't he try and trade them and try and get draft picks or younger players that are cheaper that he can keep around for longer? So letting those guys go and not getting anything back, yeah, he's the ultimate wild card. He obviously needs to adjust the offensive line. He just doesn't have a whole lot of talent up front. There is, a good left tackle and a good right tackle that could go in round 1. He could use maybe a little bit of speed at running back. He's got plenty of wide receivers. He signed Jarvis Landry. He could use a tight end. There is one tight end I think that could go in the first round. And on defense, he's got a lot of holes. He's okay up front, but linebackers just okay. Even with Van Der Esch added to the equation, and he could use a corner. His corners are just all right. So it's Dylan. It's like going to the casino.
And the casino chips fall, and he takes the number 1 true talent in the draft with Mr. Hughes from Kansas State. He's a running back, which is not exactly where I saw this pick going. But hey, there's something to be said about getting number 1 at 17, tied with the Defensive end that Jamie got at number 7, but 17, number 1 overall in talent. Something to be said for that, right?
Yeah, I mean he's smaller. He's not as he's got the market on small running backs covered. You know, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is 5'7", and Frank Hughes is 5'8", but Frank Hughes is quite a bit faster than Edwards-Helaire. And I mean, if a running back's got 94 speed, 97 acceleration with 91 agility, 92 change of direction, 89 juke move, like you said, number 1 true talent. When you've got that kind of passing attack and you've got to worry about the speed on the outside, you come out in 3 wide and you run this running back. If he gets a hole or a lane, you know, he's gone. So I could see what he's trying to do here. And how do you fault someone's taking the number 1 true talent in the draft at 17th overall?
Yeah, exactly. He's just going to try and put up 50 and give up 48. That's what I can see this season being for Dylan. Next up, Josh Ashmore in Arizona, longtime Arizona resident. I think Josh does a great job. He got Deion Jones up the middle to pair with Simmons and Buchanan, and I'm sorry, not Buchanan anymore. It's the safety, but there's all kinds of speed on that defense. Chandler Jones still pass rushing. This Cardinals team missed the playoffs at 10-6 last year, which is it's a shame to go 10-6, miss the playoffs. Not a ton of holes in this roster. He could go anywhere, and I think he goes best player available.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a franchise quarterback in Kyler Murray. Again, he won 10 games in arguably the toughest division in the entire league. He's got plenty of talent at wide receiver. He signed Robert Woods. He's got Hopkins. He's got Isabella in the slot. His offensive line, you know, not great, but he still put up pretty good numbers. So I could see him taking maybe a left tackle here. You said his defense has tons of speed. He's got, you know, 90 pluses linebacker. He's got some really solid corners, even letting Patrick Peterson go. So I could see him easily taking an offensive lineman, or maybe, you know, possibly even a tight end, because he doesn't really have much tight end.
And nailed on the head there at the end, coming off the board, is the tight end from Alabama. So Eric Stockton, benefit of the number 1 overall pick, Mr. Duff, comes off the board at 18 to Arizona. It's got to be nice and easy to play with the number 1 quarterback in the draft. That really boosts your stock a little bit.
Yeah, he'll certainly get noticed. And I mean, he brings 85 speed and 91 acceleration, 85 agility to the table at, you know, good size for the position. I would say as well at 6'4", 257. And with Hopkins and the other weapons they have on the outside, I mean, you know, he's going to draw a lot of single coverage against linebackers. He's got the ability to get open. And I think he'll be a good fit out there in Arizona, because the more diverse you can be on offense against 2 of the better defensive users in the league, and Chad and Joe Shawley, you know, you need all the weapons you can get on your side.
Agreed. Up next here, we got Anthony, the AFC West champion, at below 500. I think this roster has a lot of holes in it still. I think wide receiver, he's set. I think Drew Lock is the quarterback of the future here. I think he's got to go defense. Even with Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, I still think there's a lot of holes. Probably secondary, maybe in the interior linebacker. But I think defense is kind of where he's got to go. I feel like that offense is pretty well set for him. He's just got a lot of work to do. You got to get above 500 and win a division. That's the end all be all of it.
Yeah, I could see him taking a left tackle. His offensive line's okay. Like you said, his skill positions are pretty set on offense. He does have tremendous pass rushers and a pretty solid defensive tackle duo. Linebacker can make a lot of sense there in terms of upgrading a little bit, getting a little more speed. He has some of the, not, I would say slower linebackers, but not as much speed as you might see at linebacker. And maybe even if there was a cornerback here with speed, because he's in a division with Tyreek Hill and Miko Hardman and players like that, and Keenan Allen. So I could see a corner here, and yeah, you know, a defensive line wouldn't surprise me either.
He goes to the secondary, gets a strong safety, and Matt Davis out of Washington, another Power 5 pick. I thought his safety was probably his strongest position in the secondary, but hard to argue about a player of that caliber. What pick are we at here? 19.
Yeah, he's not the fastest safety around, but I mean, it's not often you see a 6'4" safety lurking out there either. So in jump ball situations, he could certainly be helpful. He does have pretty solid play recognition, 83 jumping in that 6'4" frame. If you're talking about trying to compete and break up passes and defend against some of the speed and wide receivers in that division, because not only do the Chiefs have tremendous speed at wide receiver, so does Las Vegas Raiders. I think maybe he went a little bit high, but if he's going to start from day one and he develops, who's to say if it wouldn't this pick doesn't work out for Denver?
And next on the board is Mike out in New Orleans. His pick is actually already submitted, and he's going to be coming in with Andrew Robertson at USF right end.
Yeah, another solid pick. He's 6'5", 250, 82 speed. He's got pretty good finesse moves already. 82 pursuit. Again, look at that. Look at that division. Tampa Bay's got really good offensive players at the skill positions. So does Carolina, and Atlanta's got Gurley and wide receivers. So you got to get after the quarterback. You got to stop the run, and I think Robertson gives him the ability to do both in a pretty good size frame there, defensive end.
Yeah, I agree. Doug is up next here in New England, 21 overall. Probably I'd argue he's got the best cornerbacks in the league as a trio. Just absolutely loaded there. So I don't think cornerback's even on the agenda. But I do think he wants to get a little bit more speed team wide. So I think anywhere he goes somewhat super athletic.
Yeah, I could see that. He's got two veteran quarterbacks he signed in the offseason, and Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford. He signed Raheem Mostert. He's got two tremendous running backs in Sonny Michel and Mostert there, and he's got some pretty solid wide receivers. He's got a good tight end. His offensive line's pretty solid. His defense doesn't have a ton of holes on the defensive line. And looking at his roster, I could see him wanting to add an impact player at linebacker. There isn't a whole lot in terms of youth or players that are really high upside caliber there. Like you said, he's got maybe the best trio of corners in the league, and he does have he could use some speed at safety as well. He does have some older safeties in Devin McCourty and Harrison Smith.
And a first round pick from Northern Illinois, middle linebacker Jimmy Goodson. Quick, he's very, very fast. What else do you see in this kid?
He was on my. I had a second first round pick. He was on my board for maybe round 2 or round 3. It's just the kind of value and athlete you don't see a lot at middle linebacker. To see a 6'4", 235-pound linebacker with 90 speed and 92 acceleration, the athleticism just flies off his tape. He needs some help in terms of zone man coverage and block shedding, but I think that kind of athleticism with the defensive line and the secondary he can just run or fly around and make plays similar to your middle linebacker Rashard. He reminds me a lot of him. So I think he'll be a good fit in New England in a division that is known for teams that are pretty pedestrian offensively. So I think Goodson could have an early impact in New England.
Next we have Ted out in Buffalo. Mr. Ted pretty much plays a style of football that puts people to sleep, but is effective, wins ball games, and he comes in at pick 22 here. Not a whole lot of holes in this Bills roster.
No, the Bills definitely have some talent. You got your franchise quarterback. You got a couple of pretty solid running backs. You got some pretty solid wide receivers. Um, he can maybe use a little help at tight end. His offensive line is okay. I could see him taking an offensive lineman. Maybe a guard or a right tackle. His defense, he's pretty stout up the middle with Ed Oliver and Marshall Derrick. I could see him maybe trying to add a pass rushing defensive end. His linebackers have good speed. He's got a couple of really good corners and some really good safeties as well. So I could see him looking at offensive line or potentially defensive line here.
And Ted adds to the receiving core, takes a big kid out of Clemson, 6'3", 228, 91 speed, 94 jumping. He's going to have a chance to go win some jump balls for him.
Yeah, I mean, everyone pays attention to Stephon Diggs for obvious reasons. So to put a guy like Fox across from him uh, seems like a good idea to me. When you've got a quarterback with the kind of arm strength and mobility that Josh Allen does, adding a player like Fox, you can go up and get it, but also has pretty good speed and acceleration and agility for the position. You can't really go wrong there. And if you're talking about putting people to sleep, maybe you can diversify his offense a little bit and open up the passing attack and put up some better numbers offensively this season.
All right, in the NFC North, we have Minnesota yet again. Go ahead and put your pick. It sounds like it's in.
Yes. Well, there's been a recurring theme here in the first round with players from power programs like Alabama, LSU, and Clemson. And I was not upset to take, I believe this is the fourth player taken from Clemson and left tackle Kelvin Pollard. My left tackle last year was veteran Eric Fisher, and he didn't want to re-sign with us. So adding a left tackle with Pollard's strength and polish was important. I want to make sure my offensive line's in good position to pass protect and also open up lanes for Dalvin Cook. And I feel like with Pollard, he gives me that. He's 6'5", 320 pounds. He's a finesse, agile scheme player, which fits my scheme, and he has 85 acceleration with 89 strength. So I think what he brings to the table will allow me to improve my offense, keep my quarterback upright, and open up running lanes for Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, I like the pick for you. Defense in the North is no joke all around. Every team has a good, solid pass rusher. I think Pollard's going to come in and help keep Gardner Minshew on his feet versus his back. In the next up in the North, we got another divisional opponent. We got Chicago, and their pick is actually already in. And KC in Chicago takes Steven Truman from Penn State, a strong safety, 21 years old, 74 overall. Kid looks like a pretty good addition for a defensive coach.
Yeah, 6'1", good size, 90 speed, upper 60s zone and man coverage, pretty good play recognition, tackling, pursuit, hip power. I think with the way he plays defense and the speed he has at linebacker, and then a pass rusher like Khalil Mack, Truman's the kind of player that can really make an impact. And when teams are forced to get rid of the ball too quickly, he has the quickness and ability to make them pay and also be able to lay a hit in the secondary. So adding a safety here, I think, makes a lot of sense for Chicago. They won the division last year. Pretty solid offense and really good defense. So adding another weapon on defense is a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned it, him coming down into the box and laying a hit, 83 hit power out of the box, coming into the league. That's pretty solid for a rookie, and he's only going to get better, especially with that 90 speed. He's going to be flying around back here against all these northern opponents.
For sure.
Next, we got Scotty again, the man behind East Coast Breaks. His pick is submitted quickly. He knew exactly who he wanted, and he goes out and gets Theo McIntyre from LSU, inside linebacker, 88 speed, 88 excel, kind of almost a prototypical exactly who he's looking for with some speed in the inside linebacker spot.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of some previous LSU linebackers. Reminds me a lot of I think Patrick Queen. Did he go to LSU? I think he did.
He did,
and then,
yes.
And then Devin White, who's down in Tampa. I mentioned before their first pick that Philadelphia had. I think they got this pick from the Steelers from a trade last year with Jalen Hurts. He needed to get better at linebacker, and McIntyre only 21. He's got 88 speed, 88 acceleration. He's got 70 zone coverage, which is really nice. So while his hip power maybe isn't what you want at 78, 79 tackling is solid, and to have that kind of zone coverage right out of the box with that speed, I think he'll be able to fly around the middle of the field and make plays and let that defensive line go to work, and he's got some good corners. So McIntyre should have an instant impact in Philadelphia.
I agree. Next up, we got Justin Brock, Los Angeles Chargers. The 26th overall pick acquired from myself, the Green Bay Packers, in addition to Kenny Clark. I think he gets a good impact interior lineman. He wasn't what I was hoping for when I got the Packers, so I was able to move on from him, but he was in dire need or desire for a defensive tackle. He asked Cleveland for Grady Jarrett, eventually came to me and Kenny Clark, so clearly he wanted a defensive tackle. He got it. Moves back to 26. I'm not sure where he'll go here. I think he's got the best safety combo in the league, trading for Minka to pair with Dervin James. I think you got to go offense after loading up on the defensive side of the ball for the past 2 seasons now.
Yeah, I could see him. I mean, he could use a corner after Desmond King. I could see him using a little bit of help there, especially in that division with the weapons and wide receivers that other teams have. Um, Linebackers, you know, solid, a lot of speedy linebackers there. I could see him taking offensive line as well. You know, he only has one offensive lineman over 75 overall. And if you're talking about trying to win that division and defend those wide receivers, well, you got to keep the other team off the field. So he's got Austin Eckler, brought back Melvin Gordon. So I could see him taking offensive lineman and trying to control the clock a little bit. And then, Keenan Allen is very, talented wide receiver, but he's not fast. And we know how those receivers work in Madden. So I could see him taking a wide receiver as well.
He does add some speed to that receiving core and takes Lindsey Morgan from Notre Dame. The last Notre Dame wide receiver picked high, Chase Claypool. He's looked pretty good in Pittsburgh. What do you think about Morgan here in Los Angeles?
I think Morgan will bring a really good amount of speed. He's got good size, 6 feet tall with 92 speed, 90 acceleration, 91 agility. He's a very shifty player. I think if he's the kind of player where it'll take him a little bit of time to get his route running and everything else in order. But if you get him the ball in space, he's got 86 change of direction, so he could take a screen, a swing, any kind of short route, and is dangerous with the ball in his hands. And he could be a big help in Los Angeles.
And everyone's favorite cop. Still a little bit of name confusion with some members of the league, and we'll respect not throwing his actual name out there just for his profession. But he takes over Houston. This is his now second year back in the league, joined the same time as you. He went on and won his division after starting 0-4. I think that's pretty impressive and overlooked. Took him a while to get his feet underneath him, but once he did, he was almost unstoppable until the playoffs.
Yeah, I thought what really helped him turn the season around, he made some really shrewd trades. I know he made a trade with you and traded Justin Reed and got Darnell Savage, who had a Pro Bowl caliber season for him. He found the running back that he wanted, Eric Hartwell. And, the one thing that Houston had when he took over was a superstar quarterback and some really fast wide receivers. And he really took advantage of that. I know he wants to be a little bit more balanced. So I could see him potentially trying to upgrade along the offensive line. He's got one really good lineman in Laramie Tunsil, and that's kind of it. His defense was stout, but I think he could use some talent there. He had to make some difficult financial decisions and let J.J. Watt go and players like that. So I could see him taking a defensive lineman, and he could potentially use a player at the other safety spot, if I'm not mistaken. He has Savage, and his other safeties are just okay. So I could see him taking a safety or offensive line here.
He goes with a man out of Ohio State, Emery Finney. Not much of a coverage guy, decent pursuit, but young, and he should be able to grow and develop. At 27 overall, I feel like that's great value.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have tremendous pass rushing move just yet, but, for a guy who's undersized, generously listed at 5'11", 232, he's got 85 speed, 89 acceleration, 91 agility. So he's got the speed and quickness off the edge. So he already has one really good outside pass rusher and Bobby Craig. So if you put Finney across from him, how many tackles in the league can keep up with that kind of speed rush? So it'll take him some time to get the finesse move up. But, adding a pass rusher and trying to find a way to slow down the offenses in that division in Tennessee and Indianapolis and Jacksonville, I can't fault him for this pick.
And just like that, Sean go ahead and puts his pick in with the Jets. He goes and takes David Brennan out of Florida, cornerback. If I'm not mistaken, this is the first corner taken since yours was taken at 3 overall. So clearly, cornerback wasn't a huge pool to choose from. But when he fell to Sean here, he knew exactly who he wanted right away.
Yeah, I mean, to have, he's 6'2", he played at Florida, so he's playing against all those players from the SEC that have already been drafted. So to have that kind of size, with 93 speed and 95 acceleration, he comes in with 70-man coverage, which I think is pretty solid. So, his secondary was very disappointing last year. So a guy like Brennan's going to be tossed onto the field pretty early. So he's just offensive line and now corner. So I think the Jets are adding some nice talent here and guys that can play right away.
Next up, we got Joe Shawley. Takes San Francisco over. He's always one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl. Just comes up a hair short every year, it seems so far. Um, Tough user, good user. He let Mostert go, like you mentioned. He moves on to New England. Um, Hughes was the clear number one running back, already taken at 18. Or I'm sorry, 17. Is there another back that he looks at? I know there's a couple out there that he mentioned pre-draft were on his radar. I'm just not sure if there's one at 29 that's worth it or not.
Yeah, there was a good collection of elusive backs, of power backs, and everything in between. And whenever you scout these guys, Madden always seems to favor the power backs. They always end up being green chips, no matter what their combine stuff looks like. So yeah, a running back is probably a pretty pressing need here. He's got one of the better rosters in the league. He's got tremendous defense. He's got a lot of wide receivers. He's got his quarterback. He's got a pretty good offensive line. So I think he's going to take a running back. I just don't know which one because there's a couple I could see him taking here.
And what might be the first ever time an Idaho State player is taken in the first round, Brenton Vick, halfback, going to San Francisco.
He's big. He's 6'1", 223, so he's a good sized running back. He's got 91 speed, 90 acceleration, 88 agility. His awareness is low, which I think keeps his overall rating down. I think a 69 is the lowest rated player taken so far in the draft. But that size and speed, and with the way Joe plays, as you pointed out, you could have him rated much higher in pretty short order.
Here we go. Dante and I'm sorry, not Dante. He's been the Ravens for so long. Ramon and his hate for Lamar Jackson. Lamar's been trying to get moved. He's just too costly, too expensive, according to the calculator. He ain't going anywhere. I think with the way Lamar's been getting injured, you got to find a way to protect him. Like you said earlier, there's a couple tackles that I'm actually surprised are still here this late. I think he goes tackle.
Yeah, I think the left tackle that I already took a few picks ago was probably the only left tackle worth taking this high. I could see him taking a right tackle. Someone like Barker would make sense to me as a player who's got some pretty good mobility. He was one of the faster offensive linemen in this draft, but still with strength. You're talking about keeping Jackson healthy, or just improving his already above average rushing attack. Adding offensive line help is something I would strongly advocate, and I think he'll take someone like Barker out of Central Florida who can get out in space and open some holes for Lamar and Dobbins and his stable of running backs in Baltimore.
Ramon does go on the offensive line, takes Daryl Barker out of UCF right tackle. Super young, but like you said, athletic. I think 1 year of polishing on him, and he could be a force leading the way on the front line.
Yeah, he traded his right tackle last year to Washington, and he opened up a hole, and he ended up having to use his first round pick to fill that hole. So interesting personnel moves there, but that's kind of how it goes.
Speaking of Washington, they're on the clock. This one is Dante and not Ramon. You can see the confusion. Ramon always Washington, Dante always the Ravens. They swapped this year, and Dante's done a good job with his team in terms of having a bunch of youth and talent, and he's built up an absolute stable of a team there. They're tough to beat. He's loaded everywhere. Drafted a wide receiver last year and absolutely tore up the league in the NFC. Won NFC Offensive Rookie of the Year. Who do you think Dante goes with here?
Yeah, he's got his quarterback, he's got his running backs, he's got his wide receivers. I know he signed Zach Ertz in free agency, so I think he's pretty set at tight end. His offensive line has some younger guys that are developing. So I think with who he has already at center, right guard, and right tackle, I don't think his offensive line worth taking here. His Achilles heel the first 2 seasons has been defense. So I think he's going to take the best defensive player available. I can see it being a defensive lineman based on that still being a strength in this draft, even late in the first round. He's got Chase Young, who's a nice player. He's got some really nice D tackles. I could see him taking a different defensive end. I could see him taking a linebacker as well.
He does add to that stable of young defensive linemen. I think he's just looking to load up on best player available. He went to the Super Bowl last year, ended up unfortunately losing for himself to our next pick, which is Sean in Jacksonville. But anytime you get to the Super Bowl, you clearly have something going right. And I mean, he just ran into a buzzsaw here. And Sean, the ultimate tank from number 1 overall to number 32 overall, your Super Bowl 7 champion, Sean Quarterman. In my opinion, he's taken best player available. He doesn't have a whole lot of holes. He's developed Newberry and Holloway into absolute studs. Receiver, he's stacked. And with the final pick of the first round, how do you think Sean A has done in terms of the tank to the champion, and that put a little bit of a tarnish on the legacy, or just it is what it is?
No, I mean, I think he didn't really have the quarterback last year. You know, Minshew wasn't really a fit for the kind of offense he wants to run, and I think, you know, he's always kind of had the Eagles for the most part in a lot of these leagues. So Jacksonville is pretty poor. You know, they have the first pick in real life, so it took him a year, but he or 2 years, so he really you know, added a lot of talent. He developed the players he has. I don't think he's taking an offensive player here. He's got his quarterback, he's got his running backs, he's got his receivers, you know, maybe a tight end, but the top two are already off the board. You know, his offensive line could use a little bit of help. I just don't know if there was anyone of, you know, worth taking at this exact spot. So yeah, I think he'll take best player available, and I think that's probably going to be a defensive lineman based on the status of this draft class.
And he does sure up the middle of his defensive line in Dwayne Thomas from Oklahoma State. 23 years old, but he's 75 overall already. I think he's a good addition. He's going to add to the just the stable that Sean's going to be able to run out there and try and stuff up the line and things of that nature.
Yeah, he's got a couple of DTs in their late 20s and Rankins and Jernigan. And, you know, a guy like Thomas, you know, he's huge. He's 318 pounds at 6'6", so he's a big space eater. And again, you're talking about a division where he didn't win it last year. So the Texans have an explosive offense. The Colts can put up points in a hurry or interceptions, depending what mood they're in. And then Tennessee's got a lot of talent on offense too. So adding a defensive tackle with 94 strength at that size with 78 block shedding, you know, that's really good value for the last pick of the first round.
Yeah, and that'll do it for our first round coverage. We come up on season 8 here. We start actually. We'll be starting here. Actually, yesterday was the kickoff. So this recap here is a couple days late, but we're rocking and rolling. What do you think in terms of what you've seen so far? Who's your Super Bowl pick? Just give us a little extra, and then we'll bid you farewell until the next time.
You know, I know Jacksonville had a really good season, and they had a really really favorable playoffs. It was a surprise winner in season 1. A more established user won in season 2. I look out west. I really like the 49ers and the Seahawks. In the NFC West, I think they have the defenses, and they're two of the better defensive users in the league, and they don't make a ton of mistakes on offense. They run the ball. They take what's there. They don't force the issue. You know, Dante had a surprising run, so I'm gonna pick the 49ers over the Texans in the Super Bowl.
I like that pick. I think Paul Stephen W is a great pick, and I actually have him winning it over. I'm gonna say bounce back year for Scotty Huffman. He's never been to the Super Bowl yet, but I think he goes this year. He's a good user. I think he goes. So I got Texans over Eagles for the 8th Super Bowl. And with that, that's our recap for the first round. Anything extra to add there, Brett?
No, I think we covered it. This was a very good first round. I think this draft class is a lot deeper. There's a lot more developmental players of a higher level than last year's draft, and I think with the amount of defensive linemen taken, with, you know, a couple of quarterbacks, some offensive linemen, wide receivers, running backs, this first round had everything. You know, every position was pretty much covered, and I think most teams are probably pretty happy with who they walked away with in the first round.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think it's gonna be exciting season 8. So I thank you for joining me, and hopefully, guys like this kind of stuff, and we'll keep doing it and see what else we can add to. And if anybody has any more ideas or wants to join us in the future, just feel free to shoot me a message, and we'll figure it out.
All right, thanks for having me, Zach.
Thanks. Have a good night.
You too.